Hey all, my name is Angelica Rubio, State Representative for District 35, representing the city of Las Cruces, and this is a brief update. I wanted to take a moment to share a little bit about what happened yesterday with the Supreme Court here in the United States. As you all know, they suck bad. Well, they made a decision that ultimately is affecting and will affect all of the Latino community across the country. Basically, what they ruled is that immigration agents like Border Patrol and ICE can now stop people based on how they look, the language they speak, and even the kind of work that they do. And that means that all of us are going to feel it in some way, shape, or form. I want to slow it down a little bit because I think it can be a little bit confusing. But up until now, there were at least some limits from the way that immigration agents could stop someone. If they didn't have a real reason, they couldn't pull you over. They weren't supposed to just pull you over or approach you for no cause at all. But this ruling changes all of that. It basically says that if someone looks or sounds like they might be an immigrant, go ahead and stop them. It opens the door to racial profiling in a way that should make every single one of us really pay attention to what's happening. I think the most important thing that I want to share with folks that I need people to understand is that this doesn't just affect people who are undocumented. This can mean anybody who fits the profile. You can be a citizen, you can be a resident, you can be a person with a work permit. It doesn't matter. If they think you look like an immigrant, you can be stopped. Here in New Mexico, it hits home because we already live in what we call a border zone, which the Border Patrol already has a ton of authority. For a lot of us who grew up here, we grew up with checkpoints on I-25 and I-10, and we've seen people harassed at these checkpoints. We've seen family members harassed. We've seen people get pulled over from being pulled out of their cars. And now the Supreme Court is essentially giving the green light for even more of that, not just here on the border, but across the country. And here's something that I want to be honest about because I don't feel like it gets talked about enough, because so many of these issues get so politicized, and I feel like both parties have taken advantage of this conversation, particularly around immigration and our inability to actually create a better place for immigrants. This country has been moving for a really long time in the direction that we're in right now. After 9/11, immigration enforcement got wrapped up in this whole national security narrative that happened shortly after that attack. And under both Democrat and Republican administrations, Border Patrol and ICE were given incredible amounts of money for their budgets, but they were also given more power and a lot less oversight than any other agency in our federal government. And now with this ruling, the court is saying the quiet part out loud. So it's all been very implicit all this time, but now the court yesterday's ruling is saying, oh, racial profiling is fine. Except that it's always been implicit. It's never, they're just saying it out loud. And so I think it's heavy news, obviously. And some of you all might be thinking dude, things have been really quiet lately. We're not seeing raids every day like in other parts of the country. What gives? And that's true right now. There aren't any mass raids. There's not going to be a ton of vans pulling up into our city tomorrow. But what this ruling tells us is that it can open the door to that. It opens the door a little bit wider. It sets the stage. And when the political winds shift, because they will, this ruling is what they will use to justify more harassment, more checkpoints, and more arrests. The question is whether or not our political leaders will allow for more of that. And that is where I really need you all to stay vigilant about that, and where our people, our legislators, our federal delegation stand on that. Now, this whole thing really breaks my heart. But I think the thing that breaks my heart even more is that some of our own, like, family members work for Border Patrol or ICE. We all know someone that works for these institutions, a cousin, an uncle, a neighbor. And what this ruling is telling us now is that when we begin to normalize racial profiling, when you make it legal to stop people just for looking a certain way, nobody's really safe. Not even the folks who are working for these harmful institutions, because power like this always expands. And this is why I always say that my liberation is contingent on yours. Like, I'm not going to be free unless you're free. And I wish I could say that I came up with that. I didn't. It's like a big organizing principle. But what I'm saying is that what the Supreme Court did yesterday, it just expands that, and that's the sad part. So what do we do with this information? First, and I've said this before, we need to continue to talk to each other. If you have elders who are in your family who don't speak English, tell them what's happening. If you have neighbors who are scared or confused, check in on them. Let's not let people live in fear alone. Second, it's really important that people know their rights. And if you work for an organization, or if you have resources that you're familiar with, and I say this more importantly for folks in rural areas, because those are the folks, I think places like Cruces and the surrounding area, like, we have resources, but I worry about places like around the state who don't. And so if you are an organization or someone who has these resources so people understand what their rights are, please share that in the comments. Especially if you're hosting anything virtually, that would be really important to share, and I'm happy to share that information if you just tag me. I think more importantly, though, we really do have to stand together as New Mexicans the way we always have. You know, we've survived laws, we've survived rulings like this before, and we've survived because we've always looked out for each other. That's why I love New Mexico, is because that is our spirit. We share food with our neighbors. We give people rides. When ICE is out in the community, like, we let people know what's up. And that is what's going to keep families safe. And I encourage you all that if you haven't already done it, please do it. Please set up like a phone tree. Please create a network, especially those of you who are out in the rural areas. Like, find your people, share your information. I also want to finally say that, like, this ruling is serious. It's not something to brush off, but it's also not a reason to panic. This is the moment to organize. Organizing is a priority, y'all. Tell the truth and protect each other. That is part of what organizing entails. I'll keep sharing what I learn. Don't keep it to yourself. Tell your friends, talk to your family, and remember, we've always taken care of each other here in New Mexico, and that's how we're going to get through this. So with that, take care of each other. We'll talk soon.